Hi world, this is Ellie Kushner and this is Pilates on Facebook Live. This is sort of a general movement class, not meant to have anything too complicated. I'll provide a little bit of challenge as we go along, but it's really important that you stay safe, be aware of how your body's responding and how your body feels, because we really have to take care of ourselves these days. Let's begin in a seated position. Let's start seated this way, so you can sit with your legs crossed, and let's just do a little side bending here from side to side. You can take your arms out to the side. We'll come back to this later, so we'll just introduce it now. Bending to the side and coming back up, and bending to the side and back up. You can inhale to go over. And then as you exhale, you can use the exhale to help your ribs snuggle back in. And then you go over, really feeling a big expansiveness on one side, and then use your exhale to come back up. You can also add an arm if that feels appropriate. And up. And we're just starting with some really basic spinal movements: side bending, rotating, flexing, extending. Those are the main moves that your spine does. And then it combines those for more complex movements. And one more time, side bending and up. And then you're gonna rotate. So you're just gonna rotate to one side. Don't wrench yourself around. Just put your hands gently at your body for a little tactile feedback, and sit up really, really tall. So it's less about rotating and more about floating up. Feel your ribs floating up over your pelvis, your head floating, and you can allow your eyes to wander around your room, whether it's a cluttered living room or an expansive studio, and then come back to the center. And then you're gonna just rotate gently to the other side. We're just getting started, just introducing your spine to rotation. You might feel a little limitation at first, but if you float your ribs and identify the back of your head, move the back of your head up, and then your eyes drift around, you might start to feel a little more liberated in your spine. And back to the center. And then we'll do a little exhale to go forward, exhaling forward, and inhaling to come up. And then you're gonna hold on to your knees, and you're gonna lift your chest up to the ceiling, really pressing your knees down onto your hands and lifting your chest rather than dropping your head back. And then try that again. Big breath, exhaling, go over, hip stretch for some of you, spine movement. Press your knees down into your hands and lift your chest up. And come back to the center. And then we're gonna switch our feet so that we do the other side. Pilates, we love to be even. So now we go to the other side, and let's go exhaling over. So we exhale over. And then we use the inhalation to float back up to the top. Exhaling over. Inhaling up. Exhaling over. Inhaling to float up. Exhaling to soften that side of your rib cage. Inhaling to float up. One more time to each side. Exhaling to fall over. Inhaling up. Last time to the other side. Exhaling over. And then inhaling, floating up. We'll rotate now to the opposite side. So we rotate, and this time just let your eyes wander, your ribs float, and back to the center. And then you rotate the other way. Eyes wander, back of the head, back of the rib cage. One more time, rotating and center, and last time to the other side, rotating, feeling the back of your ribs, the back of your head, and back to center. Last thing we do here is our folding over, exhaling and inhaling to arch a little bit. Exhaling. So again, we're just getting these really basic movements that the spine can do prepared, because we're going to use them in complex ways as we go along. We're going to use them in complex ways. I don't know if you said that, heard that while I was bowed over. Bowed over, is that a word? And lift up. In a bow might be more accurate. So now we have a little movement of our spine. Let's do a couple other things to prepare. Let's come on to hands and knees. So there's a few areas that can hold us back when we start moving, and one of them is tightness in our mid back. If this area is tight, then our abs can't fully engage. So we're gonna do a cat back. We start on our hands and knees. Take a moment to prepare your wrists for this. And then you're gonna exhale to round your back up. Stay there. Stay there for a few moments, widening your shoulders. And draw your chin to your throat, not your chest, your throat, like you're giving yourself a double chin. And then really think of your belly button doing the lifting. And you're gonna go halfway back to child's pose. Leave your hands where they are. Glue them to the mat. Keep your belly button doming up away from your thighs so that you get a nice stretch through the back of your rib cage. And then come back up and just release that for a moment. Let me do this again. Round your back up, exhaling into a big cat back. The shoulders will love this, so you say thank you but no thank you. Really put that effort into your low abdomen, lifting the hip bones up towards the ceiling. Keep that lift as you go halfway back to child's pose. Scooping, scooping, scooping. Widen the shoulders, allow the arms to feel heavy. The hands are glued to the mat, and then come back up and release. And we'll do it one more time. Rounding your back up, really lifting from the hip bones, belly button in. Feel the long line of your shins behind you and your fingertips long in front of you, really doming up, 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 up. And come back up. And then we're gonna make our way onto our stomach. And we're gonna do a really simple, conventional quad stretch. Okay? Simple, but maybe treacherous. So you put your hand to your foot. So for some people that might already be intense, and we'll talk about that in a moment if it is. But if you're able to comfortably grab your foot, you're gonna do so. Your head can turn to that side, and you're gonna engage your glutes a little bit. That will help to stretch the front of your leg. Those are opposite muscles. If you work your glute, you stretch the stuff in the front. And you're gonna elongate the other leg, so it's really, really long, and you're gonna stay there. Now, if that initial grab is too hard for you, you can lie on your side, folding your knees. You can take your foot this way, and then gradually start to bring it back until you feel a stretch. So that way, you're not maybe in full hip extension, but you might already get a quad stretch. Regardless of what position you're in, you wanna make sure that your abdominals are engaged and your back is long. And then we're gonna put that down and we do the other side. So there's a lot that we don't know about stretching. When to do it, how much to do it, whether it does anything. But generally we do most of our stretching after activity, but there is a degree to which if a muscle is really, really tight, it's gonna inhibit the activation of other muscles. So for example, if your quads are really tight, squeeze your glutes, stretch your standing leg, that's your straight leg. If your quads are really tight, you're gonna have a hard time engaging your hamstrings and your glutes. So let's just give them a little breathing space and then come back down, and we'll do each side one more time. Let's give those quads a little bit of breath, a little sense of length, so that we can then really activate the hamstrings and glutes. Right, so if you already squeeze your butt and your hamstrings, you'll notice that that intensifies the stretch on that quad, right? And release, and one more time, other side. There's a lot of active stretching moves in Pilates, so that's great. We like the active stretching, but something like this can help you just sort of identify where the muscles are, alleviate that most root level tightness. All right, and then let that go. Push yourself back into a little child's pose and stay there for a moment. Stay there and just take a few breaths, feeling the back of your ribs move when the front of your body is a little bit compressed the way it is in child's pose, a little bit crowded in the front. Your body will look for that movement in the back a little bit more than it might in other positions. So as you breathe, you might really feel that movement in the back of your body when you're in child's pose. For some of you, this is a shoulder stretch. For some of you, it's a challenge for your legs. And come back up. Okay, so now we begin the more Pilates things. So we're gonna lie on our backs. And we're in what's called hook lying position, where my pelvis is neutral. That means it's not tucked, it's not arched, it's even in the middle. It can take years to figure that out, so don't dwell on it if it's too much. And just generally balanced, and your knees are bent with your feet on the floor. All right, and we're gonna start with just a little movement of the pelvis. And the movement will be to flatten the back as we exhale and to arch the back as we inhale. All right, and there's a bone. You can get started exhaling to flatten your back and inhaling to arch your back. There's a bone at the base of your spine that is both part of the spine and part of the pelvis, your sacrum. It's the keystone of your pelvis. It's the piece that sort of sits in the middle of the two pelvic halves. And it's also one of the last bones of your spine. And as we rock back and forth, you're rocking on that bone, that sacrum bone, like it's a rocking horse foot. All right, so like it's the foot of a rocking chair. You're rocking back and forth on that rounded bone and noticing the sort of surface of that bone, feeling it contacting the mat, noticing the imprint that you're making on the mat. And now you've been going back and forth, kind of, if you had paint, it would all be on the middle of your sacrum. But now we're going to start to explore the sides of the sacrum. So we're going to go into the pelvic bowl and hold. And we're just going to put a little paint from the floor on the side of the sacrum. So we just tip the pelvis over and we just come around the side of the sacrum till we get to the tail. And then we're going to come up the other side. You know, if you're getting your fingerprints done and you put the fingerprint down and then you just kind of like roll it in the ink, that's what we're doing with our sacrum right now. The ink pad is the mat, your sacrum is the finger. All right, so now we go the other way. We roll the sacrum around in the paint, just sort of getting all those surfaces of the sacrum covered in paint from the floor. And we keep going from side to side. So we go around one side and up the other. And then we go down one side and up the first. Does that make sense? Who knows? Hey Abyss, I hope this makes sense. We do this a couple more times. It's also known as a pelvic clock. And last time. And that should feel kind of good and restorative to your body. Well, that's a cough. Take a breath and stay there. Get yourself organized. We're going to move on into bridging. So we revisit that tip. We tip the pelvis. We lift the tailbone. And then we're going to continue to lift the tailbone up and up and up, pressing onto the toes, reaching the knees away, inhaling at the top. And then we're going to roll back down, melting into the spine, still keeping the tail lifted, tipping the pelvis, trying to contact the mat with each piece of our back, and then back to neutral. Inhale to prepare. Exhale to tip your pelvis, peel your tailbone up, feel your feet on the floor, project your knees forward, keep your ribs tame. So take a moment to just pet your ribs, talk them down, tell them to stay relaxed, chill out ribs, and figure out how to get your glutes and your hamstrings to not relax, to really work. And then you're gonna roll back down. And you're gonna do that one more time. Take a breath in. Exhale to pelvic bowl. Tip your pelvis. Press those toes down. Start getting under the tail, up and under the pelvis. Use the hamstrings, use the glutes. Keep feeling the lift from there. Talking the ribs down. Thanks, but no thanks. That's what my Alexander teacher used to say. Inhaling at the top and then slowly rolling back down. That should give you a little sensation in your legs. I need some water. We're only 10 minutes in and I'm having teacher voice. Okay. Lying on your back, interlace your hands, place them behind your head. Lift your elbows up until you can see them in your peripheral vision. So you get a little bit of sight of your elbows. And feel that that allows you to connect to the front of your spine. So if we open our elbows all the way out, we can imagine this as the tiniest little cow back there ever was. I swear this is not a cough to be concerned about. I promise you that this is just a teacher cough. I promise. So your elbows are wide. And when your elbows are wide, you can feel a little bit of extension in your spine. And then you're going to lift your elbows up into your peripheral view. And you're going to think of this as the tiniest little cat back there ever was. So you're getting just a little sense of cinching the front of the body together. When you open your elbows, you get a little sense of cinching the back of the body. And then when you lift the elbows, a little bit of collecting in the front. All right, so now we stay collected in the front. We take a breath in, and you're gonna nod your head and shoulders to curl up off the mat. Stay there for a couple moments, and then you're gonna lower back down. It's also because I'm shouting. I don't know why I'm shouting, but something about having invisible participants makes me feel like I need to shout. Like, you know, you might be all the way in Queens, and if I shout, or in the UK, maybe you'll hear me better, you know? And then back down. And we're gonna do this a couple times. So you nod your chin, you curl up, and you really want to try to get your shoulder blades off the ground. So sometimes we get a little stuck down here, flatten our thoracics, and then we just do this head lift. We don't want that. We want to do a little bit of a head lift, and then we want to think of really changing the shape of the rib cage, changing the thoracic spine as we come up. And we're going to do that one more time, nodding your chin, curling up, really changing that upper mid-back region, and then back down. All right? Stay there with your head. Take your hands and put them on your hips. So the head stays down, the feet come together, your hands are on your hips. You're going to lift your heels a little bit up off the mat, and then you're going to open your knees apart, and then close them back together. All right, so you inhale, open your knees apart, and then you're gonna exhale to close the knees together. You're gonna do that a few times. So you're making a butterfly now where you were doing it with your elbows, now you're doing it with your knees, opening your knees and then closing your knees. Now, no matter where your knees go, you have to keep your spine the same. That's your task with this, is to not allow the back to arch and then flatten and then arch and then flatten. You keep the exact level surface that you have here, when you're here, all throughout that butterfly. You keep that level pelvis, all right? You're gonna do that twice more. And you're gonna do it one last time. Interlace your hands, place them behind your head again, nod your head and shoulders up. This time, you do a one-legged butterfly. So you open one leg out to the side, excuse me, and come back in. And then you open the other leg out to the side and come back in. Opening the first leg out to the side without letting your pelvis change, and then come back in. Open the other side out and back in. No matter where your knees are, you look at your pelvis and you keep it exactly the same. If this stresses your head and neck out, you can also do it with your head down. All right, so you can keep your head down and do the exact same move. Opening and closing. And one last time, opening and closing. Okay, so now we're gonna put this together with a bridge. So you take a breath in and you pelvic bowl and you bridge your pelvis up and hold. Now you're going to do that same little butterfly move, opening one knee out to the side and then closing it back in. And then you're going to open the other knee out to the side and close it back in. So no matter where you are, your pelvis stays stable. I open my left knee out and I'm going to keep my hip bones exactly where they are, and then I'm going to come back in. I open my right knee out and I'm going to keep my hip bones facing up to the ceiling. I'm going to keep the relationship between my standing leg and pelvis exactly the same, and I'm going to do that one more time with each side. Opening one knee in a one-legged butterfly. And then I'm going to do it last time, out and in. And then I'm going to roll down through the pelvis. We do that one more time. Take a breath in. Pelvic bowl. Bridge your pelvis up. Stay there. Open one knee out and come back. Cough. Open the other knee out and back in. A couple more with each side. Opening one knee without letting your pelvis swing over there. So you keep your spine unaffected. Nothing twists. Nothing side bends. Keep everything very consistent in your pelvis and in your standing leg. And you should feel your rotators and the side back of your leg as you open that knee. One more time. And back. And then you're going to roll down. That should help you feel your glutes and your hamstrings, as well as your external rotators in your hips. Now we're going to do a couple Pilates classics. We're going to do single leg stretch and twist. So we're going to start with the hands on the knees, and you take a breath in. You nod your head and shoulders to come up. You're going to stay there and breathe for a moment, kind of feeling your armpit into your ribs, feeling that big, generous curve of your thoracic spine. And then you're going to stretch one leg away, and then you're going to switch to the other side and switch. And there's this moment where you're not holding on to either leg. And in that moment, you want to make sure that you really stay curled up, that you don't allow yourself to fall back. That's the moment where you really connect into the motor, the engine of your abdominals. And you're going to do that a couple more times. Switch and switch. And last time, switch and switch. All right. Now, before we go into twist, let's warm up our rotation. We're going to interlace the hands and put them in a circle over the sternum. And you're going to do a little rotating from side to side here. So I'm bringing my arms over to the left. My right shoulder blade is coming off the mat. And then I come back to the center. And then I go the other way and back to the center. Now I'm going to go over to the left. My right shoulder blade comes off. I nod my chin and I curl up as if I want to see my baby toe on my left side. And then I'm going to come back down. When I rotate over, I have to keep this circle. All right, so I rotate over, keeping the circle. I don't want it to change its shape. I keep the circle, and then I nod my chin, looking around my thigh, trying to see my baby toe on the right. And I'm going to do that a couple more times, rotating, curling, looking at the baby toe. Rotating and curling. And one last time, rotating and curling. And last time, and back down. So now we've gotten some awareness of our trunk for rotating. We're going to hug the knees into the chest again. Curl the head and shoulders up again. And then this time, stay very tucked. Really keep your head and shoulders up. You're going to let go. Bring those hands behind your head and neck. Get that same sort of elbows in the peripheral vision orientation, and you're going to twist opposite elbow to knee, and then switch to the other side. Twist and twist. And later we'll do this standing. Twist and twist. So make a little note of it. See what that feels like. Twist and twist. One last time. Sometimes this gets a little two-dimensional, so make sure you're really curling up. Let's do one more with that in mind. Curling up, so not letting that back elbow fall down, but really curling up around the bend. Curl the elbow around the bend, and then come back down. All right, let's do some roll-ups. Nothing more classic Pilates than roll-ups. You start by hiking up your pants. If you've done enough Pilates, you know that roll-ups start with a little tug on your waist. You reach your arms up to the ceiling. If you have enough room, which I must do, you're going to bring your arms overhead and back up. And you're going to practice doing that without letting your ribs go up. So most of us are a little tight in the shoulders. So as our arms go back, the ribs lift up off the floor. So instead, anchor your ribs into the mat and figure out how you can keep that while you find more range of motion and more flexibility from the shoulder. All right, try that one more time. And then you're going to inhale to lift up to the ceiling. Exhale to nod your chin. Sometimes the first one is a little brutal there. You might have to bend your knees. You might have to do a little kick. And then you're going to roll back down. And then you extend your arms overhead as your space allows. Inhale to reach up to the ceiling. Exhale to nod your chin. And try to smooth out those places that feel a little difficult. Now, when you're at the top, it's not a hamstring stretch. If you're flexible, you might be tempted to do that. Some of you are like, I have no temptation to do that. But some of you will feel that. And instead, it's really a curve. It's really about lifting your abdominals up off your thighs. So that's the cue for the flexible people, is to keep that feeling of lifting the abdominals away from the thighs. If you're less flexible, same cue. Still get that lift from your stomach, because that will actually help you get more reach over your legs. All right, try a couple more. Rolling down, reaching overhead, inhaling to come up, exhaling to nod your chin, smoothing out those tight spots, curling over, keeping your belly button up away from your thighs, and back down. And one more time, inhaling, exhaling, using your breath to bring you up. All right, then at the top here, we'll do a little rolling like a ball, which is playful and also informative. So for rolling like a ball, you sit at the top of your mat and you hold on to your shins, and you're gonna roll a little bit behind your sits bones. Try that again. Just sit up tall. Try not to shrug your shoulders up. Instead, really think of your belly button moving away from your thighs. And try that one last time, sitting up tall. Pull your belly button away from your thighs, roll back and stay, and then walk your toes a little closer to you, and then walk them in and up off the floor. So my toes are off the mat, my elbows are bent, my stomach is pulling away from my thighs, and I roll back and up. And then I try to keep my toes off at the top. So I'm going to exhale to go back and inhale up. Some of you might feel like you roll like a triangle, and Joseph Pilates would say, if you practice every day for 10 minutes, you will get better. Nowadays we might say, well, instead of trying something that's brutally difficult for 2 weeks, instead work on finding spinal flexibility. So do a lot of cat back and things like that. But regardless, if you practice, it will get better. And keep your elbows equally bent no matter where you are in your sequence. So if you're at the top or you're at the top in the other direction, your elbows and knees remain exactly as bent. So you don't want to kick with your legs to come up. You really try to find your center and back up. All right. Also just gives you like a nice spine massage, really helps you feel your spine. Speaking of spine, let's do some extension work. So that means we're going to lie on our stomach, And we're going to start with our hands by our shoulders. Then our head turned to one side. And our legs are long, feet are on the floor. And you're going to inhale to lift your spine, pick your head up, turn your head, and lower back down. All right? So we're just starting with extension. That is extension. This part right here is called extension of your spine. And I want you to think of your upper arm bones spiraling out as you do this. So sometimes they can get a little bit this way, but we want to think of really wrapping sort of the bicep this direction around the arm. So as you lift up, right around here, you might feel tempted to get some leverage from your arms. Instead, try to find that spiral in your upper arm and back down. And do that a couple more times. Lifting up, a little spiral in your upper arms. One more time to each side. Lifting up, turning, and lowering. And last time. And down. Now you're going to keep your head down, and you're going to bend your knees. Simple enough, right? But you must keep the front of your hips flush to the mat. So you cannot let your bum pop up and your hips flex. You need to really keep hip extension and try to curl those hamstrings in. And you're going to kick your heels towards your bum. And then you're going to glue your feet down to the floor, and you're going to do that same lift, extend, turn, and lower. So as you bend, you must keep the front of your hips connected to the floor, and then lower your feet. Lift and turn, and down. So the legs go kick, kick, kick. Body comes up as the feet come down, so there's a coordinated sequence there. Heels towards bum, feet down, head up, so that there's a relationship between your feet and your head. And you can start to make your extension a little bit bigger if that's appropriate for you, or you can keep it small if that's better. And the last piece of this double leg kick is that the kicking shouldn't reverberate all through your body. So when you kick your knees, you don't want to see your head kind of rocking on the mat back and forth. You want to think that you're absorbing that momentum in your core, which includes your hip muscles, your glutes, your stomach. All your deep core muscles are soaking up that perturbation, as they would call it scientifically, and lower down. And then we're going to push back from here into a little child's pose. Stretch the back for a moment, not too long, because we want to keep those muscles activated. We're going to come up to our hands and knees. So when we're on our hands and knees, we are using the front of our body to resist the pull of gravity. And then we're also using a lot of our shoulder muscles and back muscles to organize the shoulder scapular region. So we don't want the head to fall and the shoulder blades to mush together. Instead, we're going to come up. My eyes are gazing in front of the mat, and I've lifted my throat as well as my heart to come up. So let's try sort of good version, bad version a couple times. So there's the schlump where your shoulder blades come together, and then we're going to widen the shoulder blades, float the throat, bring the eyes up into the skull, and hold. And we're going to try that a couple more times. Little schlump, and then float, finding width in the back. So it's not so much about working your chest. You are going to work your chest muscles a little bit. It's the nature of anatomy. But you're going to try to find sort of a wide rib cage feeling so that we start to get into what's called the serratus anterior. And then you're going to stay here, and you're going to take one hand away and put it on your chest, and then put it back down. And then you're going to put the other hand on your chest and back down. And you'll notice sometimes when you take that hand away, there's a little schlump. So you have to avoid that. You have to keep that supported feeling even when you take the hand away, so that the neck, the throat, the shoulder of the standing arm. They have no idea that anything has changed. And the pelvis isn't tucked this way, and it's not disengaged in that direction. You're really finding that sort of serviceable back. You know, you could like serve a whole meal right there on your spine right now, right? It's not gonna fall down onto your feet. Then you're gonna take one hand away and stay. Now again, we do that little schlump, so we let ourselves go into that position. My standing elbow is still straight, and then I'm gonna support myself back up, and then I switch hands. I bring the other hand to my body, I do a little schlump, and then I find the whole core shoulder girdle connection and lift back up. What does that mean? Well, it means that when we talk about core, we're actually not just talking about the abs in the front of the body. Actually, your whole shoulder complex, all the muscles that stabilize your shoulder blade, organize your upper body, those are also included in the core infrastructure, usually. There's no set definition, but most people would include shoulder girdle. So as we come up, we can kind of see, oh yeah, that organization of my shoulder that I'm doing right now, it's part of my whole trunk. It's not just shoulder. If I really allow that to be connected, I can see, oh yeah, then my serratus feeds into my ribs, and then my obliques come from my ribs, and oh yeah, there's like a relationship there, right? We do this one last time. Little schlump, and then little lift. All right, give that a break, sit back. It's a lot for the wrists, I know. Give them a little circle. Let's come onto our forearm in a little side plank move. So on the side, my knees are stacked and they're a little bit in front of me, and I'm propped up on my elbow, and I'm going to do a little of that same schlump, right? Schlump. It's very New York City, I think, to say schlump. Schlump, and then come out of it. So we go down a little bit, and then we come out of it, and we go down, and we come out of it. Now, I think it was the first class on Facebook Live. We did the anti-schlump. Right now we're in the anti-schlump, and we did lifting the pelvis. All right? Now, we're going to continue that. If you want to just do that, you can. So you anti-schlump, that means you come away from the floor, you're active in your trunk, you lift your pelvis, and you add a little clamshell, and then you come back down. This is sort of like a theme, right? We did these during the bridging, and now we're doing them here. So we lift up and clamshell simultaneously, and then when we come back down, we don't want to schlump. So even though we're lowering our pelvis, we're not going all the way to -3, right? Here's 0. Now we come up from 0, we add a clamshell if that's appropriate, and we go to 0, not to -3. So you lower your pelvis and your knee, but you keep that work in your trunk. You keep your side ribs really well supported. And I'm regretting not folding up my mat. Try it once or twice more. Lifting and clamshelling, and back down. And you think it's about this leg, right? Like it seems like, oh, the gesture's in that top leg, but it's not, is it? It's actually that bottom leg that's really doing the work, right? And back down. Because the top leg, well, it does have to lift itself up, but the bottom leg is pushing your whole body up. So it's a lot of work for that leg. All right, so we're on the elbow. We practice schlump and anti-schlump a couple times. So we go into it and out of it, just to feel what's possible there. My knees are in front of me, they're stacked up. And I do that one more time, my anti-schlump. I stay in the anti-schlump, and I lift my pelvis up and back down. And maybe that's all you're gonna do. That's a lot, right? So maybe that's enough. But if you want, you can add to this the idea of lifting the top knee and lowering back down, right? So you can see I'm going a little bit to -1. I didn't go all the way to -3, but I did get into -1. So I'm going to work harder to keep that landing more precise. I'm going to keep the lift in my armpit even as my pelvis and knee go down. That's better. Good. Lift And keep that lift in my armpit even as my pelvis descends. 2 more times, up, really working that bottom hip. And 1 more time, up and down. Good, and then sit up and just see how all of that feels in your torso. Let's come back to the first side, but we're gonna do a mermaid. So for mermaid, your knees are tucked over to the side like this, and your other hand is out. If I sit all the way up, I can get my hand close. My arms are not very long, so I can get my hand quite close. But I'm gonna reach a little further out, and let's work on the mechanics of this first part for a moment. So when I go down into my mermaid, I'm going to tuck my elbow in a little bit. I don't want my elbow pointing back behind me. I want my elbow pointing in towards my pelvis. And if I do that several times, it's a tricep exercise, right? So if you just do this with me, you put your hand on your sternum and you go down and up, you feel that's a lot of work in your tricep. You want to make sure again that you're not slumping to go down. You're really staying lifted and just bending your elbow. And then we just add the top arm over and up and over and up. And then I can add a little bit of almost like a buoyancy, like a little plyometric where I fall into that. And then I come back up, pushing off of that, and I can go across my body the other way. And then I get, again, that little bit of fall and catch myself in those muscles, push off from those muscles, reach across, twice more, catch myself, and push. And the whole while thinking about the space around my neck and my ears, and push. And last time, finding that space around my ears, so I'm not up here, I really find that space around my neck and ears, and across. And then we're gonna do the other side. Swing the legs over to the other side, and sit up. Just take a second to make sure your setup is sound and secure. So your hand is a little bit of a reach, not too much. And then I'm just gonna practice the elbow bend. So I bend the elbow down, tucking it in a little close to my hips, and then lift up. And then again, I'm just gonna practice that, bending gently down and not sinking into it, but keeping that sort of anti-slump feel. And then come back up. And I'm gonna do that a couple times, really identifying the back of my arm, my tricep, and using that to press up. And maybe adding a little arm and making that a little bigger so that the arm goes up and over. And up and over. And then I make it a little bit more robust and push. And then catch myself. And as I catch myself, I don't allow my shoulder to push up into my ear. I'm already thinking, what's the direction of that whole shoulder organization so that I land in a place that's sort of copacetic for my neck and shoulders. A couple more times. A little sort of free, buoyant, playful, and up. Good. Good. I guess that's for me. Good, Ellie. Good. Now, we're going to do a little stretch for the shoulder / work for the glutes. I see you're watching. I see your little numbers come and go. Are you taking class, or are you just watching, thinking, I should probably get on the floor, but I can't right now. I have an email to send. I know the feeling. So in this position, we're going to stay a little bit lifted through the chest. So again, this can get a little dropped down, little slump again. So I'm going to defy gravity by thrusting into my arms, activating my triceps, lifting my chest, and then I'm going to lift my pelvis up into a tabletop position, and I'm going to try to extend my hips while keeping my chest floating, and then I'm going to come back down. And that's a lot of work for various parts of your body to lift against gravity that way. My glutes are working to extend my hips, my glutes, the backs of my legs are working, but also the back of my arms are really trying to extend the shoulder. If you're hyperextended, really keep track of that in your elbow. This is a place where you can really sink into that. So you need to think of activating the muscles around the elbow joint. Keep your face forward. Don't let it fall back. I think it's a little too potentially problematic. So you can keep looking at your knees. You can look at your hips and cue yourself to get a little more hip extension. And you'll do that one more time. Thrust into your arms. Activate your triceps. Now that I've stopped screaming my way through class, my cough has gone away, so that's good. And back down. Good, and then take a little break from that. Let your shoulders relax. And then I thought we would do a couple things in a standing condition. So before we stand up, I want to do a little medial glute work. So we come back to our first side. We're going to lie all the way down. And we're going to organize our trunk with that same sort of lift under the armpit, that thematic lift. We stack our knees. We lift the top leg, and without changing the spine, keeping the spine totally organized, you're going to extend the top leg. And then from there, you're just going to lower and lift your leg. The medial glute is a muscle that lives on the side of your pelvis and attaches to your leg. And it does this action where you're lifting the foot. If it's weak or it just doesn't feel like working, you might be tempted to just sort of use gravity to drop your waist and make it easier for the leg to go up. So instead, when you lift the leg, you have to really lift under your ribs. All right? So really keeping that sort of support under your body as your leg goes up. And you do that a couple more times, lifting the heel, trying to get the back line of the leg to go up and up. And one more time, up. All right? And then we'll switch around and we'll do the other side. So you're lying on your side and you get that organization of the bottom side, sort of lifting under the ribs, keeping the waist supported, stacking the knees and the pelvis. And then you're going to lift your top leg and reach it away. No change in the spine. And then you lower and lift. So lifting from this muscle at the side of your pelvis. It should feel like the tiniest little mini side plank. So you're stabilizing your trunk. So you're working this muscle to get the leg up, but you're using your core muscles to prevent movement in your trunk, right? So it's sort of like an isometric exercise, like a plank through your trunk, and then movement at the hip. And your hip is below, like what you think, here's my hip bone, but the hip joint is below that, right? So the movement is happening down here where my hand is. And last time. All right, then before we stand up, we're also going to do a little foot preparation. So you're going to stretch your feet forward, and you can sit back if that's more comfortable for you, if your hamstrings are a little tight. And you're going to work on trying to get the soles of your feet to touch. Clap your feet together. And then you're going to bring your feet down and point them like a dancer, and then you're going to swing your toes out and bring them up. All right, so again, you try to bring the soles of your feet together. Now my knees are a little bit turned out. I'm trying to not turn them out too much, and I'm definitely keeping them straight. I'm trying as much as possible to make this about my feet and ankles. And I've started doing this a lot because I found that a lot of people don't have the flexibility that they need in their ankle to be stable in standing. So when we're standing up on our leg, our ankle has to do lots of micro negotiations, lots of micro movements to keep us stable. And if our foot is stuck in pronation, which is this position right here, we're going to be especially unstable because weight shifting to stand on one leg requires a little bit of supination in the ankle. So it's important, and then we can reverse our circles. It's important to have the flexibility to do this, and this as well is important. So I've just been noticing, really that lack of supination leading to instability, lack of balance. in people. So I've started doing more of these types of little foot ankle circles, and I find that they're challenging for different people, but they're kind of within range of possibility for everyone. All right, so now we have the feet ready, the hips ready, and we're gonna stand up. Okay, so I'll adjust the screen a little bit. You can see me hopefully. One more adjustment. Boop. All right, so if I stand all the way in the corner of my room and stand tall, I'm gonna begin by just shifting my weight and standing on one leg. So ideally we should be able to stand on one leg for a minute. And if we've ever sprained our ankle, that might be difficult, or depending on where we are in our aging process, that might be difficult, or what other conditions we're managing can be challenging. So that's sort of the baseline standard that you want to aim for. So if it's hard for you to stand on one leg, stand as long as you can and just practice and practice and practice and try to build up to a minute. If you're like a dancer or something and you spend a lot of time standing on one leg, it might not be that hard to stand for 1 minute, or it might be, honestly. If it's easy for you, then you can practice closing your eyes and trying to stay for a minute with your eyes closed. So that's sort of the next iteration, and maybe you need something close by that you can touch, or even just touching your own leg will give you a little more stability. And then you can try no hands on at all. So that's the first piece. Then we're going to combine this with a little bit of trunk movement. And the first is to lift the leg and do a curl of the spine as if to touch the nose to the knee, and then back. So this is like our single leg stretch in Pilates, right? We would take the knee and we would curl the spine this way, right? So you can start that way, taking your shin with your hands, really pulling your stomach in and trying to draw the nose to the knee. And you can do that a couple more times, trying to touch nose to knee, and last time. All right, now we do it without our hands, and let's reach up. Just because it's so forward bending, let's do a little reach up to the ceiling and then nod your chin and touch knees to nose. Inhale to lift your chest, find some expansion, and then tuck into that position. Lifting up, you can take your arms up the front if you prefer, whatever suits you, curling up and curling. Then we're going to interlace the hands, put them behind our head, and revisit that ab curl position. So my elbows aren't here because look what that does to my rib cage. Instead, I'm gonna bring my elbows forward. I just got like so much more length through the back of my ribs and my head, right? So this is where I want to be. And now I can do that same move with a twist. So I'm gonna try to touch opposite elbow to knee and then come back to standing. And I'm gonna maybe extend a little bit just so I can find that expansive position. And then I'm going to curl opposite elbow to knee and back up. I kind of feel like, yeah, touch it. There we go. Ta-da. Touch elbow to knee or as close as you can get to it. And you're going to do that a few more times. Really think back to when this was an obvious ab exercise, right? So in standing, there's a lot going on. There's many pieces to organize, and your body might be distracted from using your core. So really see if you can get into your core and think of this as an ab exercise for the last set. Really think abs. Cross your knee to your elbow via your ab muscles. And last time. And then just take a moment to just stand. Shift your weight a little bit from side to side. Roll your shoulders. Roll your head a little. Do a little wiggle. Do a little dance. And then just stand for a moment. And keep your eyes open rather than closing them. And just take a couple breaths in and out. And let your body sort of process all that movement that it's just done. Feeling the flow, the energy, micro moves involved. And with that, we're finished. So thank you. If you watch the video, if it helps you, leave a comment. If you have questions, leave a comment. If you want me to focus on something, if you plan to attend this class in the future, leave a comment. You get the theme, right? Leave a comment. So thank you so much, and I hope you're feeling good in your body. I hope you're enduring your challenging quarantine time, and see you next week. Bye.